This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Welcome. Episode 543. I'm Alicia Caparasso, assistant editor at Cast of Wonders. Our story for today is The Raven Princess by Danny Atkinson, a Cast of Wonders original. Danny Atkinson is an author in southern Alberta, Canada, who thought that as an introverted, book-loving computer junkie, she was primed for the quarantine lockdowns to be a breeze. That lasted for a couple of weeks until she missed the library so much and became so desperate for company that she started a teddy bear book club. Danny's brown bear Teddy most enjoyed reading and discussing the picture books Danny brought home from her year in Japan, while the Baz the polar bear plushie favored old back issues of fantasy magazines and comics. Their tastes may or may have not been influenced by what they were actually able to hold up when Danny was posing them. Danny's short fiction has previously appeared in Daily Science Fiction, Cast of Wonders, and the It Came from Miskatonic University anthology from Broken Eye Books. She sporadically blogs at dejadrew.dreamwith.org. This story is narrated by Pippa Alice Stevens. Pippa is an actress and voiceover artist. She played Rose Berkeley in The Invisible War and Natalie in Spiraling. And now, we've a tale to tell.
The Raven Princess by Danny Atkinson, narrated by Pippa Alice Stevens. Oh no, Clorinda muttered, fluttering to the body of the fallen prince. His limp form lay sprawled at the base of a willow tree, the fine embroidery on his clothes gleaming in the shifting patches of sunlight cast between the branches. A basket lay near his feet, and an empty wine goblet lay toppled near his hand. Clorinda pecked his fingers. No. Notchbeak flapped down to join her. Who's this? Are you going to eat him? He started pecking the other hand. Dibs on his eyes. No, Clorinda cried, hopping to the man's chest. Notchbeak ruffled his feathers in a shrug. Well, fine. We can split the eyes. He has two, after all. No eye-eating, snapped Clorinda. He's not dead. The idiot is asleep. What's the one thing I told him? Don't eat or drink anything the witch gives you, I said. It'll be enchanted, I said. Clorinda nipped the prince's ear spitefully. He twitched in his sleep, rolled on his back and began to snore. Clorinda hopped onto the prince's chest and paced. I'll be a raven forever at this rate. Notchbeak cocked his head. As opposed to what? I told you, I'm a princess. Of what? Notchbeak was only half listening, still looking longingly towards the prince's closed eyes. Of humans, Clorinda said, fluffing her throat feathers in annoyance. I'm a human princess. Since when? Since what? Clorinda blinked at him, beak agape. Since always, I told you. You've been a raven as long as I've known you. Since you were a scruffy, half-fledged chick. Notchbeak scratched the ground, perusing it for stray crumbs. And that's been what? 10 years? Clorinda beat her wings in agitation. And before that, I was a human girl. Notchbeak tugged at a particularly shiny thread of the prince's coat. Why'd you wait so long to kick up a fuss about it then? Clorinda hunched her wings awkwardly. You need a prince to save you. That's always how it works. But I was too young to marry before. How young? I think I was 8, Clorinda said. It's been a long time. Ah, so you've been a raven for longer than you've been human. Clorinda glared. What does that have to do with anything? Well, for one thing, you've been fishing jerky out of his pockets these last 5 minutes. I've been... Oh, darn it. Clorinda stared at the strips of dried meat she'd just worked loose from the prince's jacket. She hesitated, then grumpily finished gulping it down. Notchbeak turned a sulky eye to look at her sideways. And not sharing, I see. Say, does the magic food put us to sleep, or just him? I smell eggs in that basket. Clorinda croaked a defeated sigh. Go ahead. Notchbeak hopped into the basket and began wolfing down the devilled egg salad sandwiches. He stuck his head out with his beak full. No, said Clorinda, turning her beak up at him disdainfully. I'm not hungry. Notchbeak swallowed. You're still eating the prince's jerky. Oh, for... Clorinda glowered at the fresh talonful of jerky she'd apparently filched. She ate it, then hopped up to perch on the prince's head out of the way of temptation. The prince snorted a little, but still did not wake. Clorinda fretfully groomed her pinion feathers. All right. There's still 2 more days. Princes always get 3 chances. He just has to stay awake and resist the food and drink tomorrow. Then he can pour the enchanted wine over my feathers, kiss me on the head, and turn me back into a princess so we can live happily ever after. Easy. I wouldn't count on it, Notchbeak called from the basket. This food is pretty irresistible. He's not some filthy scavenger bird. He has some self-control, Clorinda retorted. Unlike someone who ate all the jerky. Clorinda coughed. Shut up. I'm under the influence of my enchanted form. That won't be a problem after tomorrow. He'll save me and I'll be human again. You'll see. Oh, come on. The prince was snoring under the tree again, an empty goblet on its side by his hand. Notchbeak flew straight for the basket. Ooh, ham roll-ups with cheese. Clorinda flew to the prince and squawked furiously in his sleeping face. Seriously, did you think something different would happen if you drank the magical drugged wine? Did you think it would be less drugged and magical on a Tuesday? What? Excuse me, came a muffled voice from the basket. Shut up, Notchbeak, Clorinda said, flutter-hopping to the basket. And give me one of those roll-ups. What, did you eat all his jerky already? Yes, okay. Notchbeak popped his head out of the basket and dropped a roll-up at her feet. Poor guy. See, that's why he was probably too hungry to resist the food. He did resist the food, Clorinda screeched. It's the wine that keeps getting him. The wine I need. To be human again, like I'm supposed to be. Notchbeak shook his head. Why are you so hung up on what you're supposed to be? What's wrong with being a raven? Clorinda pecked listlessly at the ham. It's not wrong, it's just not right. I was born human. Born? Oh, right. Humans are born instead of hatched. Notchbeak shuddered. Painful-looking process. He paused, considering. Sometimes leaves tasty placenta and bloody bits around, though. Clorinda shoved the basket. You're revolting. I'm revolting. We're revolting, and I hate this! Notchbeak ducked back down into the basket to grab more ham. How'd you end up a raven if you started human anyway? Clorinda hesitated. My mother threw me off a tower. Oh, well, normal part of growing up. Happens to us all eventually. Wait, humans can't fly, can they? Nope. Notchbeak hopped out of the basket to stare at her. Why'd your mother throw you out of the nest if you couldn't fly? Clorinda shuffled from foot to foot. She got fed up with me, I guess, she whispered. I was being noisy underfoot. She held me up to look at the ravens flying around the tower and said, I wish you'd fly away like one of them. And I did. Clorinda sighed. I think she cursed me, or maybe something in the woods was listening. I turned into a bird and flew away and joined your flock. Notchbeak huffed. An unkindness, dear. It's an unkindness of ravens. Lesser birds flock. Clorinda shrugged. Unkindness, flock, it's not what humans have. What do humans have? What's a flock of princesses? Notchbeak asked. A posse, maybe? I don't know. At this rate, I'll never find out. Because the word for a group of princes is a prat. Clorinda savagely pecked the prince's kneecap. What's he have to do with this anyway? Your mother's the one who cursed you and tossed you into the sky with us. Shouldn't you take it up with her? I couldn't, said Clorinda. She crouched down in a miserable huddle. Anyway, this is just how it works. I remember that much from the songs and stories they told me at bedtime when I was little. A prince saves you. You find a magic that can fix you. You tell a prince where to find it, and he makes it work. I did what I'm supposed to. I found the witch with the magic wine. He's supposed to love me enough to make it work. Notchbeak snorted. Psh, sounds like cuckoo thinking. Laying all your eggs in someone else's nest and hoping they'll take care of it for you. Well, what would you suggest? Clorinda snapped. I already suggested eating his eyes, but you vetoed that. No eye-eating. Fine, Notchbeak said, and flew up into the willow. He called down to her from the boughs. We're ravens, chick. We don't instruct and wait. We trick, we steal, we pull on wolf tails and rob gull nests and snatch the sun from secret places in the dark. Wait, we what? Clorinda looked up at him in confusion. Notchbeak preened himself as he continued. Ravens have our own stories we tell ourselves. If you'd let yourself be one of us long enough to listen, be one of us today. Don't wait for someone to give you magic. Steal it. Think, girl. You're not a princess yet. What would a raven do? The next day, the old witch heard a tapping at her front door and greeted it with her best smile and a greeting on her lips. You're early today, your highness. Then she trailed off as she opened the door and found no one outside. Strange, she muttered, looking about. Then she heard a tapping on her back door. The witch closed the front door and hobbled to the back, grumbling, You should call it the front, like a proper gentleman. But there was no one there either. The tapping returned to the front door. The witch hobbled to the front door, then the back, then the front, with mounting irritation. Front, back, faster and faster, and never anyone there. Finally, when she heard the back door knocking, she whirled around and ran to it without bothering to close the front door first. I'll catch you, you little! She opened the door on Notchbeak, mid-peck. He winked up at her and called. She stared at him in bewilderment. Then the witch heard a loud crash. The witch spun back around. Clorinda had flown through the still-open front door and made straight for the bottle of wine, knocking it off the shelf onto the stove and shattering it. Clorinda was bathing in the spilled wine pouring onto the floor, as happy as a sparrow in a bird bath. The witch spluttered, You little... Excuse me, is something the matter? The door was left open. The prince stood in the front door, squinting in the dim light of the cottage. Clorinda flapped damply into the air and flew straight at the prince's face. He widened his eyes and brought his hand up belatedly to defend himself. But he was too late to shield against being headbutted in the mouth by a sticky wet raven in full flight. There was a boom and a crash and a blaze of light. When the cacophony cleared, there was a woman standing in front of the prince. She was wearing ragged clothes that had once been fine, but were now far too small for her, drenched with wine. Her forehead was pressed to the prince's lips. The prince staggered back, eyes wide. He stared at her, mouth smeared with wine and a stray feather. He licked his lips and grinned. Well, hello, gorgeous. Are you... Then his eyes rolled back in his head and he toppled like a felled tree. Clorinda glared down at the prince as he began to snore. Really? Really? The witch glared at Clorinda. You've got what you wanted. Now drag your idiot out of here and clean up this mess, bird. I'm not a bird, said Clorinda. I'm a princess. The witch gave Clorinda a wry look. Are you sure? Yes, why? You just stole a strip of jerky out of his pocket. No, I didn't. The witch pinched the bridge of her nose. Get a mop, or get out. Clorinda sat by the snoring prince back under the willow tree. It was a familiar scene, except Clorinda was now viewing it from slightly higher up. Also, the prince was now stripped to his underwear. After she'd washed the wine off in a nearby stream and awkwardly ripped her far too small child's clothes off her far too large adult human body, she decided giving her his clothes was the least the prince could do. It was basic chivalry. He probably would have agreed if he'd been awake. If not, well, not being awake to disagree was his own fault. She hugged her knees, and stared into the distance. Notchbeak flew up and perched on Clorinda's shoulder. Save any of that jerky? Am I a princess? Clorinda whispered. Really? Notchbeak fluttered dismissively. You keep saying so. Now you look it. Not quite as frilly, but I assume you come into your full adult plumage later. I didn't get fixed the way a princess should. I did it like a raven. And I thought... Clorinda stared up at the branches above, Too high for her to reach and too small for her to hold. I thought everything would feel right once I was what I was supposed to be. But I don't think it is. Is this what being a princess is supposed to feel like? She sniffled. Should, supposed to, grumbled Notchbeak. You enchanted types are always so concerned with supposed to be and losing sight of what is. Clorinda snorted. Known a lot of enchanted types, have you? A few, Notchbeak said, nestling against her neck. There was one particular flock mate. Don't you mean unkindness mate? Notchbeak nipped her ear. Hush you. She was a bratty little hatchling, always falling out of trees and wandering into trouble. Didn't have the good sense to fly from a fox or fire. Still, she didn't deserve what happened. What did happen? Her mother cursed her into human shape. Clorinda twisted her head to try and look at him, eyes wide. Wait, what? I wish you'd fall out of the tree and stay there, I think she said. Something like that. And suddenly the hatchling was a bald, two-legged, wingless, featherless freak. Looked a lot like you, Notchbeak sighed. A lot. Clorinda got a sinking feeling. What happened to her? Oh, she never figured out how to fly again, though she wasted far too much of her life trying. Gave up and took a human mate. Became a queen. Clorinda froze. Her heart pounded. Wait, what? What? Are you... Was she... Notchbeak nodded sadly. Probably so. Only so many human queens about. So I gather anyway. Human pecking orders are confusing. But then... Oh no. Are you telling me I was supposed to be a raven this whole time? Clorinda felt her voice rising in a shriek. Notchbeak batted her cheek lightly with a wing. Never said that. After all, her own mother was a human enchanted into a raven. Now you're just making stuff up. Notchbeak spread his plumage. I swear on my right wing. And that one's mother was a raven enchanted into a human again. Don't know how far back it goes, or what species it was they started with. Clorinda lay down on the ground, forcing Notchbeak to hop off her shoulder with a squawk. Her head was swimming. She felt like she'd been drinking enchanted wine herself. But why? Maybe your mother thought she was doing you a favour, returning you to what you were supposed to be, since she couldn't go herself. Notchbeak stood on Clorinda's collarbone. He leaned forward and fixed her gaze with his. Or maybe she was a mixed-up angry person from a long line of mixed-up angry people, and she hurt you because it's all she'd ever been taught to do. Who knows? Us enchanted folk are a ridiculous lot. Clorinda slowly lifted her head to stare at Notchbeak. Us? Notchbeak called in exasperation. You've known me for 10 years, chick. How long do you think ravens usually live? You were human. You? My father was a human cursed into the shape of a fox. My mother was an immortal, shape-shifting fox who took on the shape of a human. I never knew what I was supposed to be. Neither did they. Though, oh, how they did argue about it. And neither of them ever sticking to the same side of the argument for 2 days in a row. Notchbeak shuddered and shook out his feathers. It made my head ache. Clorinda sat up and flung her arms out in a helpless gesture. Then why are you a raven? How does that work? Notchbeak tutted and flew to strut up and down one of her outstretched arms. I finally realised that there is no supposed to be. No should, just is and will be. I turned myself into a raven to spite them both, and please myself. And I never looked back. Feathers fit me better than skin or fur ever could. This is what I decided to be, not what I should. Clorinda stood up slowly and stared down at her feet. I don't know how to decide without a should. If there's options other than raven or human, I don't even know what they are. Notchbeak walked claw over claw back to her shoulder and started preening her hair. Well, find out. He glanced down at the snoring prince. I suppose one of those options is waiting for him to wake up and do that whole true love thing you were planning on. Clorinda looked at the prince. She sighed, turned away and started walking into the woods on unsteady legs. Wise choice, I think, said Notchbeak, nodding. He looked like terrible mate material. You'd come back to the nest to find half the eggs had been eaten by a snake. Definitely, Clorinda agreed. He did have good jerky, though. I know where a band of robbers hide their loot and supplies, Notchbeak said. They might have jerky. Clorinda raised her eyebrows. Oh, really? Us ravens keep track of a lot of such things. Food, shinies, we know all the best spots, said Notchbeak. You may regret giving up your wings. Change your mind. Clorinda snorted. Why haven't you taken the food and shinies for yourself? Notchbeak became abruptly interested in grooming his wings. The door to the hideout is closed and I don't have thumbs. Ha! Wait. Did you help me turn human just so you could take advantage of my thumbs? What? Never. Probably. Almost certainly not. Oh, hey! The path to the robber's den is that way. And the raven and the creature who might or might not be a princess strode off into the what is and the what will be.
I'll admit, as an editor, when I see the word princess in the title of a story, I automatically start to question whether I will like it or not. Princess stories are often derivative, or the same old, let's flip the narrative, where the princess saves herself, or the prince, or runs off with the dragon. It's no longer original. Now don't get me wrong, I've written my own stories with the word princess in the title. I like princesses. It's just, I've read a lot of stories in this position, but it's the law of averages, you know? I hold out hope that I'm due for a good story. What we have here is a great story. Sidebar, the law of averages is very bad statistics. I, as a scientist, feel obligated to point that out. Anyway, there are 3 things that I love about this story. First, Clorinda is confident and goal-oriented. She knows what she wants, to be human, and works to make it happen. But when her plan doesn't work out the way Clorinda expected and she faces failure, she feels a full range of emotions and needs the support and help of her friend Notchbeak to persevere. There's nothing I dislike more than a character needing nothing more than pluck and luck to succeed all on their own. Second, I love that I did not see the twist coming. That maybe Clorinda didn't start out as a human, but the clues were there, snacking on the jerky without thinking about it, not being affected by the enchanted food, being thrown from the tower by her mother. Great job, author. You got me. And that's hard to do. And lastly, the story is downright funny. It's not easy to write humor well, and here it's done masterfully. Join us again soon. We love bringing you the best audio fiction week after week, but we can't do it without your support. Your donations pay our authors, our narrators, our servers, and our staff. Please consider supporting us with a monthly donation through either PayPal or Patreon. You can also review us on Apple Podcasts, request us on Spotify, and consider the stories we publish for award consideration. There are lots of ways you can help. Join the discussion on the EA Forum, forum.escapeartists.net, or EA Discord. Visit us on Twitter at Cast of Wonders. Come say hello. Cast of Wonders is brought to you by editor Catherine Inskip and assistant editor Alicia Caparasso, associate editors Tanya Adelit, Amy Brennan, Samto Aheswe, Kup Hakab, Amanda Kong, Ray O, Simon Pan, Samuel Poots, Emma Smales, Denise Sudell, and Rin Yi. Editorial assistant Amy Brennan, community manager Denise Sudell, and our audio producer Jeremy Carter. Cast of Wonders is part of the Escape Artists Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. That means you can download or listen to the episode on any device you like, but you can't change it or sell it. Our theme music is Appeal to Heavens by Alexei Nav, available from Promo DJ or his Facebook page. Thank you for listening.